Part 3. Adorable Baby, The Miracle Doctor is So Awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 21. The person who spoke was none other than Li Yinhua. After she finished speaking, she looked as if she had just seen Gu Switting. With just one glance, her face turned red and her heart was pounding as if she had kicked a rabbit. Oh my God! How could there be such a handsome man in the world? She thought that the young owner of the restaurant in the county town was good-looking enough, but she didn't expect that compared to the person in front of her, it was nothing at all. Just like fireflies compared to the sun and the moon, there is no comparison at all. Moreover, his demeanor was extraordinary. Although she couldn't tell what was so good about him, she was sure that he definitely came from a wealthy family. I heard that the young masters of wealthy families have many wives and concubines. It would be great if she could be taken aback by Mr. Gu and take her home. In a few breaths, Li Yinhua's mind went through many thoughts. How could Shen Yizi not see through her little thoughts? He glanced at Gu Switting with a half-smile. You're not sick, come back. Li Yinhua still had such an idea even though she knew that Gu Switting was her husband. Shen Yizi was naturally unhappy with her. However, she is really not sick. Li Yinhua came over, grabbed Shen Yizi's sleeve and begged, Dr. Shen, you haven't even checked my pulse, how do you know I'm not sick? Just show me. Shen Yizi just laughed. Are you questioning my medical skills? I'm not, Dr. Shen, how can you say that? With your rosy complexion and high energy, how could you be sick? Oh, by the way, you are indeed sick. There is a disease here. I suggest you go back and eat more pig brains. Shen Yizi nodded his head. Gu Switting couldn't help but chuckle. When Shen Yizi looked over, he stopped and lowered his head as if he was making dumplings seriously. Li Yinhua bit her lower lip and looked at Gu Switting, only to see that he didn't give her a single glance. And in his heart, he couldn't help but secretly hate himself. It must have been because of Shen Yizi, the principal wife, that he ignored him. Shen Yizi really has no self-awareness at all. He is already disfigured and looks ugly. Why does he still want to dominate Mr. Gu? Even if she looks average, she is much better than her, right? Thinking about this, she couldn't help but gain more confidence and decided to give it a try. As she stood up, she suddenly felt weak and fell down. At this moment, Mr. Gu should pick her up, right? It's a pity that she thought too beautifully. Shen Yizi and Gu Switting had no interest in applauding her poor acting skills. Since she likes to lie on the floor, she'll do it. Li Yinhua never expected that they would just let her lie on the ground and do nothing. The ground was cold. After lying there for a while, she felt that her body was soaked by the cold air, which made her shiver. But if he stood up at this time, wouldn't he tell Mr. Gu that he was pretending to be faint? How much will it destroy his image in his mind? So Li Yinhua stood firm and did not move. Qingbao glanced at her and said, Mother. Shen Yizi kissed him loudly on the cheek and said, this old aunt likes to sleep on the ground, so don't worry about her. Oh, Qingbao continued to fight with the dumplings in his hands. That serious look made Shen Yizi feel itchy again. But Li Yinhua was furious. Old aunt? How dare Shen Yizi say that to her? How can she, an unmarried young lady, be as old as a woman who has given birth to a child and is old and beautiful? Li Yinhua, who was lying on the ground, watched the cold air coming from the ground while listening to the warm interactions between Shen Yizi's family of three, feeling both hate and jealousy in her heart. Finally she couldn't lie down anymore and pretended to regain consciousness. Why am I lying on the ground? As a result, no one answered. This is really embarrassing. However, Li Yinhua was also able to bend and stretch, so she handed herself a step. Dr. Shen, my head suddenly stopped hurting again, so I went back. As soon as she left the yard, her face became extremely gloomy, and her triangular eyes, which were exactly the same as Mrs. Wang's, seemed to be condensing poison. Shen, Yi, Ji. Asterisk. The soup in the pot is boiling and bubbling. Shen Yizi put the dumplings in. Gu Swiding came back from outside with Qingbao in his arms. What were you doing out holding Qingbao? I went to the village chief's house. Gu Swiding pushed Qingbao up in his arms. Now that he had mastered the skill of holding a child, it looked very normal. Going to the village chief's house, Shen Yizi was even more surprised. However, looking back, Xueting didn't answer her again, and went to play with Qingbao aside. Really, I even started playing riddles with her. Shen Yizi didn't ask any more questions, went into the kitchen, took out the dumplings, and mixed the dipping sauce. Can you eat spicy food? She asked Gu Swiding. There is no shortage of all kinds of seasonings in this world, and she is a person who loves spicy food, so she bought a lot of chili peppers, Sichuan peppercorns, etc., as well as various hot sauces. Gu Swiding thought he could eat it, so he nodded, and Shen Yizi added more chili peppers to him. As for Qingbao, he could only eat it with the soup. Shen Yizi didn't dare to give him spicy food. Gu Swiding picked up a dumpling, dipped it in the sauce, and put it into his mouth. As a result, his face turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. Seeing that Shen Yizi had more chili peppers on his plate than he did, but was eating it with gusto and didn't seem to feel spicy at all, he silently drank a glass of water to suppress the spiciness that shot straight up to the sky. What's wrong? Is it too spicy? Shen Yizi couldn't help but ask when he saw that he took a mouthful of dumplings and drank a sip of water. Ahem, it's actually not bad. Although it is spicy, it is really enjoyable and makes people unable to stop eating. Shen Yizi and Qingbao both have limited food intake. Even if they still want to eat, their stomachs can no longer hold it. As for Gu Swiding, she looks elegant and gentle, but she is really good at eating. He finished all the remaining dumplings. Putting down his chopsticks, the technique began to circulate in his body. He found that every time he ate the food cooked by Shen Yizi, the exercises would run particularly smoothly. At this time, practicing would achieve twice the result with half the effort. In just a few days, his internal strength has grown a lot, which is enough to be worth the effort of cultivation in the past year. After absorbing the energy contained in the food, he was about to stop, but found that he was close to a breakthrough, and his internal energy was running faster and faster, and it was somewhat beyond his control. The internal force, which is much more active than usual, is like a surging river at this time, swimming forward in the meridians with indomitable speed and repeatedly hitting the walls. Shen Yizi noticed that he seemed to be in a critical moment, and hurriedly picked up Qingbao, who was about to crawl on top of him, and said softly, "Baby, your Uncle Gu has something to do, so let's not disturb him. Come on, mother will play with you." When Gu Swiding woke up, it was already the zenith of the moon. The moonlight, as clear as snow, shone down, and everything in the yard was clearly visible. Jiazhuang was quiet at night, except for the occasional barking of dogs and the chirping of insects. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 22. From the perspective of Gu Swiding after the breakthrough, the world has become clearer and more transparent. He can see farther and clearer, and hear sounds that he could not hear before, such as the crawling of insects under the soil and the dripping of a drop of dew on a leaf. The technique he is practicing now is called Hunyuan Zhenjing. He found it at a wonton stall. The Hunyuan Zhenjing without even a cover at that time was used by the old man selling wontons to pad the table. That was the first time the poison in his body broke out. He lost control and ran to the stall for some reason, overturning the old man's table. The old man caught him and forced him to pay. He couldn't even control himself at that time, so how could he lose money? Strange to say, when the poison hit him, even the palace guards could not restrain him, but he could not break free from the old man's grip. Before completely losing his mind, the old man suddenly let out a cry of surprise and picked up the tattered Hunyuan scripture from the ground. "Do as I say." Then the old man read the Hunyuan Sutra to him. Every word he said was transmitted straight into the depths of his mind like a bell, and it was useless even if he covered his ears. Since he couldn't run away or beat the old man, he just started practicing as he said. Unexpectedly, after practicing, the demonic poison in his body was suppressed, and he gradually calmed down and returned to normal. Since then, he has been practicing the Hunyuan Zhenjing to this day. Hunyuan Zhenjing has 3 levels in total, and each level is divided into 10 levels. I heard from the old man that this book has 10 levels in total. He doesn't have all of them in his hand, but if he can practice to the 2nd level in his lifetime, even if burning incense. In fact, this is indeed the case. More than 10 years have passed, and he has been stuck at the 1st and 9th levels, unable to break through to the 10th level, let alone the 2nd level. But just now, he actually broke through the previous barrier and broke through to the 1st and 10th level. Goose Whitting felt the ethereal and mysterious inner force in his body, raised his hand to summon an apricot flower in the yard, and input the inner force into it. The apricot blossoms, which were originally flower buds, bloomed in layers in his palm. In the room, Shenyazi and Qingbao had already fallen asleep. Goose Whitting walked to the door and listened to the breathing of mother and son, feeling peaceful in her heart. Then he moved a chair to the door, closed his eyes and fell into meditation. Early in the morning, Shenyazi opened the door and was startled when he saw a man sitting at the door. "You, what are you doing sitting at the door?" Goose Whitting woke up from trance, with a pair of dark eyes that were restrained and clear. In the faint morning light, he was so handsome that he knew his legs were weak. When he looked at her like that, she suddenly felt a sense of hunger coming from the depths of her soul. "I want to eat him." Afraid of being noticed by him, she hurriedly walked around him and asked covertly, "What do you want to eat in the morning?" "Everything you cook tastes delicious, and I can do it too." "Shenyazi, can you please stop flirting with her early in the morning? She will not be able to control herself and pounce on her." After breakfast, Goose Whitting wiped Qingbao's mouth. Shenyazi looked at him and hesitated to speak. "What you want to say? Why haven't you left yet? Do you want to stay at my house forever?" Although she was very happy to do so, it was impossible, so she didn't have extravagant hopes. Goose Whitting looked at her intently and suddenly smiled, with a leisurely tone, "Mrs, you dislike your husband so quickly." Before Shenyazi said anything, he pretended to be pitiful towards Qingbao. "Baby, what should I do? Your mother wants to drive Dad away." Qingbao grabbed his big hand and said, "Don't leave." Goose Whitting lowered his head, nuzzled his face with the tip of his nose, and said with fond eyes, "Okay, Daddy won't leave." Qingbao hugged his face and kissed him. Goose Whitting was elated by his kiss, and her whole body was filled with obvious joy. Shenyazi couldn't stand it anymore and stood up. "Goose Whitting, come with me." She had to have a serious talk with him. Arrived in the yard, Goose Whitting leaned against the apricot tree leisurely. "What do you want to say to me?" Shenyazi sighed deeply as he looked at him with such a casual posture that was so full of spring that the whole world was eclipsed. "Goose Whitting, we all know that you are not Qingbao's father, so don't give him a wrong perception. Don't make random promises to him because you think he is young. If you can't do it then, let him be young. What should I do if my soul is hurt? Who said I made a random promise to him? Every word I said to him came from the bottom of my heart, and I was definitely not trying to trick him. You still say no? Qingbao is young, so are you still young? Why should you respond when he calls you daddy?" "Because I want to be his father." Shenyazi suddenly opened his eyes wide. What did he mean by this? The next sentence was heard by Goose Whitting, "I have thought about it, and I want to recognize Qingbao as my adopted son." Shenyazi felt like his heart suddenly broke into 8 petals. She was really being sentimental just now. I don't agree. If you want to be the father of my child, you can only be a man. If you want to seize the spot of being the father of my child, just dream. Shenyazi turned around and left angrily. Gu Swiding pulled her and said, "Why don't you agree? This is a good thing for Qingbao." Shenyazi sneered, "Who do you think you are? Do you think we should be grateful to you if you accept Qingbao as your adopted son? You take yourself too seriously. I can raise Qingbao well by myself. Let go." Gu Swiding frowned as he watched her enter the room. Why did she suddenly become angry? Since then, Shenyazi has been keeping Qingbao with her. He is not allowed to have contact with Gu Swiding, let alone call him daddy. Once Qingbao commits a crime, she will cry to him. Although Qingbao is very close to Gu Swiding, how can he compare to Shenyazi, his own mother? As soon as he saw his mother crying, he immediately forgot about Gu Swiding. Seeing this, Gu Swiding finally understood. It turned out that this woman was afraid that he would steal Qingbao's attention from her. How childish! Forget it, he is not as knowledgeable as her, but he is determined to be Qingbao's father. After so many years of living, this was the first time that he was so close to another person. As soon as he saw this little meat cub, his heart softened and he unconsciously wanted to be nice to him. At noon, Shenyazi gave Qingbao a few words, telling him to stay away from Gu Swiding and ignore him, and then went into the kitchen to cook. She made up her mind that she and Qingbao would be alone at noon. As for Gu Swiding, let him drink the northwest wind. Gu Swiding followed her in and held her cutting hand. Don't do anything for lunch, go to the village chief's house to eat. Why? At this moment, Aunt Zhao, the village chief's daughter-in-law, came. Qingbao, are you playing with your pony? Where are your parents? Qingbao called her, mother-in-law. Aunt Zhao's face suddenly burst into laughter. Hey! Qingbao is so sensible. She touched Qingbao's head lovingly. Shenyazi heard the noise inside and came out. Madam, are you here? Come in and sit down, I will pour you tea. Where are you sitting? Let's go, let's go. The banquet has started, so I'll send you. I'll take Qingbao over first. Hold up Qingbao and leave. Shenyazi tapped his chin and Gu Swiding said, Tell me, what is going on? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 23. Somehow, in her eyes, Gu Swiding felt a little embarrassed, but she didn't show the slightest, and she was still calm. Perform a complete performance. In order to thank the villagers for taking care of you in the past 3 years, I, as a husband, naturally cannot just verbally thank you, so I asked the village chief to help. I will pay and he will contribute, and we will do it at their house. A feast of running water, treat the villagers to a good meal. So, that's what you went out for yesterday. That's right. Thank you very much for taking care of us, husband. Shenyazi deliberately pinched his throat and shouted husband in a melodious way. Gu Swiding's heartbeat was out of balance for a moment, but it quickly returned to normal. I rely on you to take care of me these days, as you should. The couple arrived at the village chief's house and did not communicate with each other all the way. The village chief's family is in better condition. They have built a large blue brick house with tiles. The spacious yard can hold 4 banquet tables, and there is also a row of tables and chairs outside the yard. There was only one table in the main room, and the people sitting there were all the elders of the village. After the two arrived, Gu Swiding was immediately invited into the main room and sat at the head seat. Shenyazi sat down in the yard, next to Aunt Zhao and Aunt Li. Gu Swiding gave the village chief enough gold leaves, so this meal was a sumptuous one. It was all big dishes, and there was plenty of chicken, duck, and fish. The villagers all ate happily. In the room, Goose Whitting picked up the wine glass, reiterated his previous words of thanks, and drank the wine in one gulp. The village chief laughed. "Mr. Goo is too polite. If it had been anyone else, we wouldn't have left him alone. Don't say any more words of thanks. Mrs. Goo has also helped us a lot in the past 3 years." Others nodded in agreement. Come, come, we all eat vegetables, it's all thanks to Mr. Goo, otherwise, how would we have such good food? We wouldn't even be able to eat such good food during the new year." The village chief greeted everyone around. Goose Whitting picked up a piece of fish meat with chopsticks, but as soon as he took it into his mouth, he felt a huge difference. This was simply incomparable to what Shenyazi did. Once you are used to eating the food she cooks, eating the rest is just like rice chaff and cannot be eaten anymore. However, others ate with gusto and even devoured it. After the meal, most of the dishes on the table were empty. The village chief couldn't help but feel embarrassed when he looked at Goose Whitting, who was sitting nearby and didn't use his chopsticks much. Goose Whitting smiled at him, picked up the wine glass and touched it with him alone. "Uncle Lee, actually I still have something to ask for." You say it, I will never refuse if I can do it." "Don't worry, you can definitely do this." After a banquet, the villagers are satisfied. Goose Whitting was also relatively satisfied. He held this banquet not only to thank the villagers, but also to support Shenyazi. The village chief also promised him that in his absence, he would try his best to look after Shenyazi, mother and son, and prevent them from being bullied. In this way, after he leaves, the situation of Shenyazi and Qingbao will not become embarrassing. As soon as he has a chance, he will come to visit Qingbao. On the way back, Shenyazi walked in front with Qingbao in his arms, while Goose Whitting trailed 2 steps behind. Qingbao lay on Shenyazi's shoulder, reaching for him with his little hand. Goose Whitting handed his hand over to him to grab. Shenyazi noticed something and turned around suddenly, but Goose Whitting had already retracted his hand in time. When she turned her head, Qingbao grinned at Goose Whitting, as if she thought he was playing a game with him. Goose Whitting saw his smile, raised the corners of his lips, and reached out to pinch his face. But this time, Shenyazi finally caught him. "You're actually seducing my son behind my back, what do you want to do?" Goose Whitting leaned closer to her. "Do you really disagree with my previous proposal?" Shenyazi was startled by his sudden approach, and when he came to his senses, he flatly refused. "No." "Okay." Goose Whitting looked disappointed. Unexpectedly, at this moment, he suddenly reached out and snatched Qingbao away from her arms, and disappeared without a trace in a flash. Qingbao's cheerful laughter gradually faded away. "Hey, where are you taking Qingbao? Come back here." Shenyazi was so angry that he became a puffer fish, but after the anger passed, he couldn't help but laugh again. How could Goose Whitting do such a childish thing? However, what should she do if she thinks he is cute like this? It's really hopeless. Goose Whitting took Qingbao out all afternoon and didn't come back until dinner time. Shenyazi sat in front of the table with his arms folded and glanced over expressionlessly. "Do you still know how to come back?" Goose Whitting handed her the newly dressed treasure, which looked like a lucky doll. Qingbao held a pearl flower in his hand and presented it to her like a treasure. Looking at the big and small, Shenyazi couldn't hold back. He chuckled, hugged Qingbao, and bit him on the face. "You brat! When you have a father, you forget about your mother, right?" Goose Whitting's eyes moved. Did she agree to let him be Qingbao's father? "Since you are so cute, I will forgive you, but you can't do it again next time, or I will spank your little ass." Shenyazi made a show of patting Qingbao's butt. The result not only failed to shock him, but also made him laugh again. Looking at him smiling, she couldn't help but laugh too. Goose Whitting looked at the mother and son who were laughing together, with an unconscious smile on his face. Come and put the pearl flowers on my mother's face. Shen Yizi helped Qingbao stand on his lap. Qingbao tried for a long time before inserting the pearl flower. Her hair, which was originally well combed, was messed up by him. Several hairs were broken by him. However, wearing the beaded flowers that her son put on her own hands, she still felt sweet in her heart. Whose family does this cute, sensible, and caring little baby belong to? Shen Yizi rubbed his little nose. She originally thought she had predicted his answer, but what he said was instead, Daddy. Shen Yizi. Feeling like a sharp arrow has been shot in the heart. Baby, you don't love me anymore, Shen Yizi pretended to cry. Qingbao couldn't help but look at Gu Swiding. Gu Swiding held her forehead. Could this woman be any more childish? He actually played this game with Qingbao. I bought you some rouge and gouache. They were recommended by the shopkeeper. She said you women would like them. Do you want to take a look? Gu Swiding said. Rouge gouache? She usually drinks spiritual springs and eats spiritual food, and her skin is in perfect condition. Does she still need rouge and gouache? But since he bought it for her, she should just look at it reluctantly. Thinking this in her heart, but the smile showing at the corners of her eyes and brows had already betrayed her. Gu Swiding opened a delicate wooden box and pushed it over. Shen Yizi took a look at it and found that it was quite complete. There were facial grease, lipstick, rouge, and eyebrow pencil. She dipped her fingers into some rouge and applied it on the back of her hand. It felt good and delicate. But how can it compare with the cosmetics she made in her previous life? Speaking of cosmeceuticals, she suddenly felt blessed. In this life, she had a spiritual spring in her hand, and using the medicinal materials grown in the space, the cosmeceuticals she made must be even more effective. Moreover, this is a way to make money. But now that she has two treasures, Gu Swiding and Qingbao, she doesn't have the time or thought to do that for the time being. She will write it down first and try it out when she has time. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 24. Thank you very much. I like it very much. Shen Yizi closed the box. Gu Swiding didn't really believe it. The smile on her face looked perfunctory. Okay. Didn't the boss lady say that all women would like it? Why does she look so uninterested? Looking at the large scar on her right face, he suddenly understood. Maybe she felt that even if she used all the rouge and gouache now, it would be in vain? She secretly decided to find a famous doctor to treat her when she returned to Beijing. In fact, judging from the intact left half of her face, she should be pretty good looking, even pretty. Shen Yizi noticed that he was staring at his face and couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong? Is there something on my face?" At this moment, Gu Swiding realized that he had been looking at her in a trance just now. I suddenly remembered something, so I won't eat tonight. You don't have to do my share. He got up in a disguised manner and walked out. Okay. By the way, I have to go into the mountains to collect herbs tomorrow. It may take 2 or 3 days. I won't be able to deliver food to you for the time being. You can take care of it yourself then, okay? Gu Swiding paused and strode away. It's okay not to see him for the past 2 days, he needs to calm down. Shen Yizi looked away and saw Qingbao looking outside. When he turned his head, he looked at her and cried. She suddenly became anxious. Baby, why are you crying? Ah! Don't cry, don't cry. She carried him around the room, bumping his little body, and kept wiping his tears. Is it hurting somewhere, or are you hungry? Mother made cakes, let's go get them for our baby to eat. Okay, stop crying. When you cry, mother wants to cry too. Shen Yizi brought out the yam and red date cake. In order to coax Qingbao, she specially made it into the shape of an animal. As soon as Qingbao saw the cakes in the shapes of rabbits, piglets, and ducks on the plate, his attention was attracted and he couldn't stop crying. She was greatly relieved, picked up a rabbit pastry and put it in his little hand. Qingbao stared blankly, Shen Yizi pretending to come and grab it. Ho ho, if you don't eat it, your mother will eat it. Qingbao immediately put the pastry into his mouth and bit off the rabbit's head in one bite. Is it tasty? Tasty. Can you give me a bite for your mother? King Bao picked off a small ball with his fingers and fed it to her. Shen Yizi deliberately made a Miami sound, it's so delicious. Eat more, baby, and I'll get you a little piglet. After dinner, Shen Yizi put Qingbao into his space and took out the tangram puzzle for him to put together. Seeing that he was having fun, she felt relieved. She will probably spend the next few days in the mountains, so she needs to prepare some food. Shen Yizi went to the kitchen to work. Early the next morning, she took the medicine basket and set off. This time, she collected herbs with purpose. In the memory of the original owner, there was a cluster of Ganoderma lucidum growing on a cliff deep in Qingmang Mountain. However, because the position was too dangerous, she was afraid that she would slip and fall, so she had no choice but to give up. Shen Yizi doesn't have this worry. She was going to collect the Ganoderma lucidum. Lingzi has the effects of invigorating qi and calming the nerves, relieving coughs and asthma, and prolonging life. It is used in many medicines. After arriving at the cliff without any danger, Shen Yizi looked down and saw a cloud of steaming mist, which was a bit scary. Even if she wasn't afraid of heights, she still couldn't help but feel a little weak in her legs. The clump of purple Ganoderma lucidum grows 5 or 6 meters below the cliff. If this was on flat ground, you could cross it in a few steps of 5 or 6 meters, but this is a cliff, and you will fall if you are not careful. If this were the case, she would have some space and would not be shattered to pieces, but a shock would definitely be necessary. She took out a roll of thick rope from the space, tied one end firmly to a cypress tree growing on the cliff, and tied the other end to her waist. She tried it, and it was still very strong. Before going down, Shen Yizi entered the space consciously, and stayed with Qingbei and I for a while before exiting. Slowly walking backwards to the edge of the cliff, Shen Yizi carefully stepped on his feet and put down his other foot only after he stepped firmly. Just like this, moving step by step, it took more than 10 minutes to reach the edge of Ganoderma lucidum. The largest Ganoderma lucidum in the cluster is about 30 centimeters in diameter. It is a rich purplish ink color and looks very moist. It must be 100 years or more. Shen Yizi stretched out her hand and picked off the Ganoderma lucidum. As soon as the Ganoderma lucidum left the soil, a red shadow suddenly came over, and then she felt a sharp pain from the tiger's mouth. A little red snake bit her hand. She flicked it subconsciously, but the snake bit her and refused to let go. The next second, her head felt dizzy, her vision became blurred, and her body began to stiffen. Good guy, he is so poisonous. Shen Yizi did not dare to take it lightly. He immediately took out the scalpel and cut off the skin and flesh of the red snake on his hand. The second before losing consciousness, he cut the rope and entered the space. She didn't notice that the red snake that was supposed to fall was wrapped around her body and followed her into the space. Shen Yizi fell into a coma almost as soon as he landed on the ground, and did not even have time to take the detoxification pill. Qingbao saw his mother coming in and immediately ran over. Mother. Seeing Shen Yizi lying motionless and not responding to him, Qingbao opened his eyes with a confused expression. At this moment, the red snake came out. He held his head high and spat at him. Qingbao knelt down and looked at red snake. One cub and one snake, just looking at each other. Suddenly, Qingbao stretched out his hand to grab the red snake, and the red snake bit him. A suppressive force suddenly came down, like a big mountain pressing it to the ground, almost flattening it. Red snake's green vertical pupils were full of shock. Small world. There is actually a small world hidden in an ordinary mortal woman in this wild land. Moreover, this world still has the power of complete rules, which secretly protects the people in the space from being hurt by external things. His first thought was to this small world as his own. If he had this small world, his cultivation speed would be hundreds of times faster than before. In this way, he will be able to cultivate a human body in no time. However, he quickly suppressed this idea, because the small world is different from ordinary spiritual weapons and magic weapons, and you can grab them easily. Once the woman who contracted it dies, it will sink into the void and wait for the next owner instead of contracting with him. So, not only can he not let this woman die now, he must also protect her, so that he can follow her to gain space and aura. Speaking of which, the spiritual energy here is much richer than outside. Red Snake restrained his murderous aura, and the suppressive power in his body disappeared. Seeing that the woman on the ground was deeply poisoned and in a critical condition, Red Snake became anxious and cruelly bit herself and dripped the snake's blood into her mouth. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 25. Seeing the poisonous energy dissipate from her face, Red Snake breathed a sigh of relief. Hissed twice at Qingbao, who was squatting next to him, "Baby, if it weren't for me, you would have no mother." Having lost so much blood, he needs to replenish his health. The red snake couldn't wait to crawl towards the place with the strongest spiritual energy, the location of the spiritual spring. However, just as he approached the white jade fence at the edge of the spiritual spring, an invisible and colorless barrier suddenly appeared, which bounced it back and rolled it twice on the ground. Depend on. Do you want to be so picky about this space? Didn't he just want to drink some spiritual spring to replenish his body? As for guarding him like a thief? Thinking back to his status as Zhuhua Immortal, Ling Quan still had as much as he wanted. Even the spiritual milk ointment was not rare to him, but now that he was reborn, it was so difficult to drink some spiritual spring. Snake life is difficult. Qingbao came over and looked at him. Red Snake stared at the little kid and suddenly had an idea. When Shenyazi woke up, her head was still a little dizzy. She shook her head and stood up from the ground. Seeing Qingbao squatting there, he walked over and said, "Baby." Qingbao turned his head and immediately revealed the red snake in front of him. When Shenyazi saw it, he was so frightened that his heart almost stopped. Why did the snake enter the space? Still so close to Qingbao? She tried to calm down. "Qingbao, don't move. Don't move." She was afraid that Qingbao's movement would arouse the snake's ferocity and give him a bite. But the next moment, something even more frightening happened to her. That snake actually climbed onto Qingbao's body and wrapped itself around his arm. What should we do now? She knew the poisonous nature of that snake. Hey, speaking of it, wasn't she poisoned? Why did you wake up by yourself? But she couldn't care about that now. She only knew that a poisonous snake was wrapped around her little baby, and she was going crazy. Just when she was scratching her hair in a hurry, the red snake slowly crawled down again. Shenyazi rushed forward and held Qingbao far away. The red snake glanced at her and crawled to a certain place. Why does the snake's eyes look so human? Is it her imagination? Shenyazi put Qingbao on the crib. "Baby, just stay here, don't come down, do you hear me?" Seeing him nod, she picked up the medicine and slowly walked towards the red snake. She will never allow such dangerous things to exist in her own space. Especially Qingbao is still inside. She wants to kill all hidden dangers. The strange thing is that the snake lay there motionless, as if it didn't know the danger was coming. As he got closer, Shenyazi was about to hit it to death with when a crooked line of characters on the ground came into view. "Give me the spiritual fountain, and I will recognize you as my lord." Red Snake raised his head and observed her reaction. At this time, Shenyazi had fallen into a sluggish state. This line of text obviously couldn't have been written by Qingbao, and it certainly wasn't written by her, and in this space, apart from her and Qingbao, there was only this red snake in front of me. In order to verify the absurd guess in her mind, she swallowed her saliva and stared at the snake nervously. If you wrote this line, nod your head 3 times. She was speechless for a while, but she still did as she said. Shenyazi. Is this world a fantasy? Or was she hallucinating? After a strange exchange, Shenyazi finally accepted the setting that the red snake in front of him could understand human speech. She crossed her chest with one hand and held her chin with the other, turning around in the space, never taking her eyes off the red snake. Forget it, isn't it just a snake that can understand human speech and can write? What's so strange? There are all kinds of strange things in the world. Especially this world itself is unusual. Shenyazi walked up to the red snake and looked down at it. You said, if I give you the spiritual spring, you will recognize me as your master. Red snake nodded. Knows Lingquan and can negotiate with her. It seems that this snake knows a lot and is not a little white snake that has just awakened its spiritual intelligence. Shenyazi pointed his finger at his chin. How to recognize the master? Is it possible to make a contract like in the novel about cultivating immortals? Red snake, this woman still knows about the contract? Is she not an ordinary person? That's right, a contract. Red snake held a wooden stick in his mouth and trudged around on the ground writing. But I can't. Shenyazi moved a chair over and sat on it. Red snake wrote, I'm coming. Ha, do you think I'm a fool? Come here. What if you turn your back on me and give me a contract? Then my personal freedom will be gone, and I will be restricted by you everywhere. I won't do such a stupid thing. Red snake, this woman knows a lot. He did have this idea in mind and contracted her in reverse during the contract. By then, the entire space would be his. She is immortal and doesn't understand those things anyway. Who knew she was so smart? She wouldn't be fooled at all. Equality contract, I will give my heart and soul, and you will accept it. Red snake had no choice but to find another way. Shenyazi sneered, have you understood the situation? You are in my space now. Here, I am the biggest. You still want to negotiate terms with me? Do you want to make an equal contract? Besides, have you forgotten one thing? You bit me before and I almost died. I haven't settled the debt with you yet. She is a very grudge-bearing person. The wound on the back of her hand was still there. She will not make a contract with it unless the account is cancelled. Otherwise, when the contract is made, it will become her little brother. How can she have the nerve to trouble it? Speaking of which, I was clearly poisoned before. Why did I suddenly recover? Did you do something? Shenyazi asked. The opportunity to gain favor is here. She hurriedly wrote down briefly the fact that he fed her a drop of blood to help her detoxify. However, Shenyazi's focus is, can your blood detoxify? Can it only detoxify your poison, or can it also detoxify other poisons? Red snake, it is certain that it can detoxify itself, but as for other poisons, it has not tried it. Shenyazi immediately brought out an itching poison he had concocted. If you get a little bit of this poison, it will make you itchy so much that you can't wait to scratch out your heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys. It was prepared by her for those scumbags who dared to provoke her. An antidote is also available. Come here, I'll give you a chance to atone for your sins, contribute a few drops of blood, and then I'll consider taking you in. How about that? Red snake. This woman is so unreasonable. Did he beg her to take him in? He's not surprised yet. It really off the snake. But the next second, come on. Shenyazi took out a small knife, made a slight cut on the red snake, and caught the blood that flowed out in a small porcelain bottle. 1 drop, 2 drops, 7 or 8 drops. Hello, didn't you say just a few drops? Is this woman going to drain his blood? He slapped his snake's tail on the back of her hand to remind her, That's enough for you. Okay, isn't it just a few drops of blood? Put a few drops of blood from time to help blood circulation. From what she said, bloodletting will be inevitable in the future. She instantly felt that her future in snake life was bleak. Shenyazi saw that a lot of snake blood had accumulated in the porcelain bottle, and then he mercifully let it go and applied the original hemostatic ointment on it. In the blink of an eye, the wound healed. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 26. Well, for your cooperation, I will reward you with a drop of spiritual spring. Shenyazi dipped his chopsticks into a drop of the spiritual spring, and Red Snake immediately raised his head to catch it. This drop of spiritual spring has not been diluted, it is completely liquefied spiritual energy. As soon as he entered the body, Red Snake felt a strong spiritual energy impacting the snake's body. He was busy using his skills to absorb and refine it. An hour later, Red Snake opened his eyes, a hint of joy flashed in his eyes. He had just introduced Qi into his body. I have officially entered the journey of cultivation. On the other side, Shenyazi had finished the experiment. She used herself as the experimental subject, rubbed a little itchy poison on the back of her hand, endured the heartbreaking itching, and drank a drop of snake blood. It didn't take long for the itching to subside. It really can be solved. It seems that the snake blood is a treasure. Shenyazi was so excited that he tested other poisons one by one. Snake blood was able to successfully detoxify the poison. The key was that the effect was faster, no slower than taking the antidote. If she uses the snake blood as medicine, develops a universal detoxifying pill, and then adds it to the medicinal spring, that's going against heaven. It seems that this red snake is of great value for cultivation. Shenyazi made a decision in his heart. But this snake is not simple. Before taking it in, she had to endure it to make it docile. Are you awake? How about it? The spirit spring tastes good, right? Shenyazi walked over and saw that the color of the red snake's body became brighter and more translucent, so he knew that it must have benefited a lot. Great, if only there were a few more drops. These words were directly transmitted into Shenyazi's mind by Red Snake using his spiritual consciousness. Shenyazi was startled. Are you able to speak? It's just a sound transmission from the divine consciousness. How about it? Do you want to learn from me? I can teach you the skills and let you embark on the road to immortality and immortality. Cultivation. Shenyazi originally thought that she was living in an ancient fictional world and that she was going to make a fortune by farming and raising children. Unexpectedly, she suddenly became a cultivator. But think about it, it didn't happen all at once, some clues had already been revealed before. For example, her space, such as the ferocious beast. Not for the time being, although Shenyazi was very tempted, she had not yet fully understood the details of the snake. How could she dare to follow it and learn to cultivate immortality? What if it does something and makes her go crazy? Okay, if you think about it clearly, you can come to me at any time. Red Snake was still a little unwilling. It was so diligent that Shenyazi did not dare to agree easily. Actually, she had wronged Red Snake in this regard. He just wanted to use the opportunity of teaching her to collect more spiritual springs. Now he is basically tied to the same boat with her. Only when she gets better can he get better, right? He valued her life more than her own. After all, once she dies, this small world will disappear without a trace. Where will he get the spiritual spring to drink from? Unfortunately, Shenyazi didn't know this. Out of selfish motives, Red Snake would not tell her. Seeing that it crossed its body and closed its eyes, as if it was performing the legendary immortal cultivation exercise, Shenyazi stared at it for a while, but couldn't figure out the reason, so he ignored it. As she turned around, she suddenly remembered, why is the snake so honest? The spiritual spring was right there. If it wanted to drink, it could have gone in and drank while she was unconscious, but it didn't do that. Does it not want to? No, she felt more that it couldn't. Hey, can't you get close to the spiritual spring? Shenyazi took a stick and poked the red snake. What are you doing? I'm practicing, and if you suddenly come here like this, what should I do if I go crazy? Red snake is very fiery. Shenyazi smiled coldly, really? She suddenly felt a chill all over her body and laughed twice. The snake was under the eaves and had to lower its head. What did you just ask? Shenyazi repeated the question, and she thought to herself, as the master of the space, she didn't know? How on earth did she contract to this small world? Simply unscientific. Seeing its eyes rolling, Shenyazi poked it again and said, what are you planning on doing? Give me an honest answer. Red Snake dodged her stick a little helplessly. Yes, as an outsider, as soon as I get close to the spiritual spring, I will be bounced away by the barrier that appears out of thin air. I see. Then she wouldn't have to worry about the snake drinking from the spiritual spring while she was away. Do you have any questions? I still have to seize the time to practice. She was very tired. I was wondering if I should put you in a cage. How can that be done? Red Snake objected firmly. Realizing that his tone was too fierce, he quickly added, I won't run around, don't worry. If I leave the space, you and Qingbao will be the only ones left here. Do you think I would feel comfortable letting my baby stay with a poisonous snake? Are you mistaken? As long as that little kid doesn't hurt me, how dare I touch him? Shenyazi immediately caught an unusual message from this sentence, you didn't dare to touch him? So, you originally wanted to touch him, but you were stopped by the power in the space, right? Her tone became increasingly dangerous. Red Snake hurriedly explained, I didn't want to touch him. Really, I just wanted to make a joke with him. No matter how unscrupulous I am, I will never do anything to a child. But as soon as I moved, I was given the space suppressed. Shenyazi stared at it carefully, as if analyzing how true his words were. Okay, I'll believe you for now. However, you have to demonstrate it to me on the spot. Under Shenyazi's gaze, Red Snake rushed toward Qingbao with murderous intent, but an invisible pressure suddenly came and pinned him to the ground. Shenyazi finally felt relieved looking at this scene. Shenyazi was very satisfied with the two functions of the newly unearthed space. She lifted up the red snake that was pressed into the soil. Seeing his sluggish look, Shenyazi said with a smile, okay, please help me. For the sake of unlocking the two functions of space, I will reward you with a drop of spiritual spring. Red Snake instantly resurrects with full health. After drinking the spiritual spring, quickly crawl back to absorb and refine it. Shenyazi came to the crib and looked at Qingbao, who was enjoying playing alone. He leaned over and kissed him, baby, are you hungry? Let's have a meal. She took out the pre-prepared meals from the cupboard, placed them on the small round table, and started to enjoy them with Qingbao. After thinking about it, he took out a plate, divided some food out, and placed it in front of Red Snake. Red Snake finished refining the spiritual spring, and then with the help of the rich spiritual energy in the space, he broke through to the first level of chi refining in one fell swoop. He felt so excited. I think back then, as a peerless genius, he was nurtured by all kinds of heavenly and earthly treasures from his mother's womb. He was a nascent soul when he was born. Later, when he was practicing, he also progressed very quickly. He had never experienced this kind of step-by-step improvement. Promotion experience. Now once you are reborn, your peerless talent is gone, your powerful cultivation is gone, and you have to start everything from scratch. When he thought of the woman who had put him in this situation, he gritted his teeth with hatred. Just wait, Sooner or later, he will fight back again. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 27. 11 Gong opened his eyes and saw a plate of food in front of him. Red Snake was stunned for a moment. This was prepared for him by that woman? It seems that she is not so hopeless. By the way, my name is Yi Chang, you can call me from now on. Xiao Chang, right? My name is Shen Yazi, you can call me whatever you want. Yu Chang, don't let him be called Xiao Chang. It sounds like a little pet. I think back then, he was called Mr. Yi. Later, he was even revered as the immortal of 9 flowers. He was praised wherever he went, but now he has been reduced to Xiao Chang. Forget it, if I talk too much, I will shed tears. Xiao Chang will be Xiao Chang. After dinner, Shen Yazi coaxed Qingbao to take a nap. Looking at his chubby little face, she felt quite relieved that her 3 to 5 meals a day feedings these days were not in vain. But she always felt that it was not enough. She felt heartbroken when she thought of the memory of the original owner, when Qingbao had no milk to eat and was so hungry that he cried loudly. By the way, she can also raise a dairy goat in the space and milk him every day to make up for the fact that he didn't drink enough milk when he was a baby. She will do it after she goes out this time. Leaning over and kissing him on the forehead, Shen Yazi glanced at Red Snake, gave a few instructions, and stepped out of the space. As soon as she came out, a palpitating feeling of weightlessness gripped her. Shen Yazi resisted the urge to enter the space and allowed himself to fall freely. After falling for more than 10 seconds, it has not yet reached the bottom. Perhaps relying on the backing of space, Shen Yazi was not that scared, but actually felt a bit of a sense of free fall. She stretched out her arms and imagined that she was a big bird, flying through the clouds and mist, with the cold mountain wind blowing across her face, all of which brought her extraordinary enjoyment. When the ground appeared in sight, Shen Yazi entered the space. Due to the inertia of her fall, she sat down on the ground as soon as she entered. Her head was dizzy for a while before her vision became clear. Going to the small bed, she took a few sips on Qingbao's face. She felt resurrected with full blood and came out of space again. This time, she didn't enter the space until the second before she hit the ground. The thrill of it made her adrenaline surge, and she even had the urge to try it a few more times. At her core, she is not someone who is content with the status quo and likes challenges. As she fell, she used her bird's eye view to observe the bottom of the cliff. It is very desolate down there, with basically no greenery, except for a pool of water, and nothing else. The pool of water is very strange, like a naturally formed Tai Chi diagram. The black and white yin and yang fish divide the pool into 2 parts, with clear distinction between Jing and Wei. Shen Yazi ate something to replenish energy, drank a large glass of spiritual spring water, and walked out of the space with a medicinal hoe. It is surrounded by towering cliffs on all sides. When viewed from a high altitude, the bottom looks like a cow-shaped cage. This feeling is even more obvious when you are in it. She took the medicine and observed it. She couldn't help but feel a little panicked. There was not even a way out here. Only ants can probably crawl through the gaps between the cliffs. Finally, she cast her sights on the Tai Chi pool. Let's call it that. Perhaps, the pool of water was connected to other waters, and she might have to leave from the bottom of the pool in the end. She got closer and found a plant growing in the center of the pond. It looked like a lotus, but its petals were half black and half white, as were the lotus pods inside. Although half of the water in the pool was black, it was very clear. She could clearly see the fish swimming in it. Those fish were as long as fingers, as white as snow, and were extremely fast, darting from one end to the other in a flash. When she saw these fish, her first thought was, can they be eaten? Get some and try them out. But it's not easy to catch such a small fish. There is it. Shen Yazi took out a bamboo cage with a narrow mouth and a big belly from the space, soaked the rice grains in the spiritual spring for a while, sprinkled them into the bamboo cage, and slowly sank the bamboo cage into the pond. The cage mouth is only slightly lower than the water surface, making it easier for her to lift it up quickly without giving the fish a chance to escape. As expected, those fish could not resist the temptation of the spiritual spring, and swam over one after another and got into the bamboo cage. Seeing that there were enough fish in, Shen Yazi suddenly raised his head and saw that half of the fish were netted in the bamboo cage. It was a full harvest. She entered the space carrying the bamboo cage. Unknown to him, shortly after she disappeared, a pair of huge ice blue eyes appeared, and then disappeared again. In the space, Shen Yazi threw a small white bait to Yi Chang. Try it and see if it's poisonous. What do you think I am? Are you testing the poison? And you asked me to test the poison, so why use the lost one? How disrespectful. He wants to take back his previous words. Yu Chang had the guts to refuse, but when he saw the little silver fish, a trace of surprise flashed in his snake eyes. If he admits correctly, this kind of fish is a snowfish that can only be born from extreme environments like Yin-Yang Lake. Eating it can purify the spiritual energy in the body. Yin-Yang Pond was difficult to find even in his original world, but he didn't expect it to appear in this wild place. However, Yin-Yang Pond itself only contains yin and yang qi, and it has little to do with the amount of spiritual energy. Looking at the snowfish on the plate, Yi Chang naturally would not refuse and opened his mouth to swallow the whole fish. Shen Yazi watched him eating from the side and couldn't help but feel a sense of nausea and horror. After eating, Yi Chang told her, "This fish is not poisonous. Not only is it not poisonous, but it is also a rare spiritual material. Eating it can purify the spiritual energy in the body. You can get more." Shen Yazi showed him the cage of fish and said, "Do you even need to tell me?" Yu Chang was suddenly speechless. Shen Yazi started to deal with the cage of fish. She planned to fry half of it. This kind of fish has fewer bones and is crispy after frying. You can eat it head and tail. The other half is used to make soup. Qingbao woke up from the fragrance, rubbed his eyes and got up, lying on the railing of the small bed and looking at her. "Mother. Is the baby awake?" Shen Yazi hurriedly dropped what he was doing, wiped his hands and walked over, picked him up and kissed him. "Do you want to pee?" "Pee. Okay." Shen Yazi carried him to the corner of the space, where she used a curtain to separate a toilet area specifically for solving major life issues. The space has a purification function, and the dirt that falls on the ground will be quickly absorbed and decomposed by the soil, which saves her a lot of trouble. After shushing Qingbao, Shen Yazi led him out, asked him to sit on a chair, and brought him a plate of chicken cakes and a glass of homemade juice for him to drink. "Go back and continue frying the small white bait." Qingbao was still thinking about Red Snake, so he searched around with a small plate. When he found it, he squatted down in front of him, grabbed a ball of chicken cake and fed it to him. "Yi Chang, little brat, sir, I won't eat the food that comes here." However, in the next second, he crawled over honestly and rolled the pastry into his mouth. It smells so good." Shen Yazi fried a pot of small white bait, put it into a small basket as big as a plate, and took one to taste. What kind of angel fish is this? It's so delicious. Baby, come and try the little fried fish made by mother." When he turned around, Qingbao was nowhere to be seen. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 28. As I walked over, I saw a scene of a man and a snake living in harmony and sharing a piece of cake. Shen Yazi subconsciously panicked for a moment, but when she thought about the protection mechanism of space, she felt relieved. If Yu Chang dares to do harm to Qingbao, space will not kill him. "Baby, open your mouth." Shen Yazi tore off a piece of fish and fed it into his mouth. Is it tasty? Qingbao directly reached out to grab a small fried fish in her hand and answered with practical actions. Seeing that he was eating well, Shen Yizi thought that he would have to catch more next time he went out. Give Qingbao a snack. Yu Chain watched from the side and opened his mouth. Unfortunately, he waited for a long time and did not come to feed him. Fall. Why does this woman only feed Qingbao but not him? It's too biased. Just now he was testing poison on her. Shen Yizi seemed to have finally noticed him and waved a small fried fish in front of him. Yu Chain was brave enough not to open his mouth. Humph, when a snake is angry, it needs at least 3 small fried fish to appease it. You really don't want to eat it, then I'll take it away. Shen Yizi tried to take back the little fried fish, but Yi Chang suddenly rushed over, bit the little fried fish, and quickly retreated. It was so fast that after images appeared. After swallowing the small fried fish, Red Snake suddenly remembered and asked, "Did you see a flower in Yin Yang Pond?" Flower? I saw it. It looks very similar to a lotus, but the petals are half black and half white. It's quite strange. Yin Yang flower, Yi Chang was excited. Quickly, pick that yin yang flower, it's a treasure that can increase your lifespan if you eat it. Really? Shen Yizi was a little incredulous. Why did I lie to you? Okay, I'll pick it up right now. Etc. Is there anything else? I'm confused. Only when the fruits of the yin yang flower are completely mature will the best effect be achieved. Go and see if the fruits there have turned purple. If so, it means that they have already matured. It's ripe and ready to be picked. Shen Yizi came out of the space and found that the fruit of the yin-yang flower was still red, so he went into the space to tell Yi Chang. It looks like it's coming soon, let's just wait a few days. But then again, there are usually monsters guarding these kinds of treasures. It would be too dangerous for you to pick them. The same thing is said, if something happened to Shen Yizi, he would not have such a good training environment, so he had to consider her. In this case, you take me out and I'll go explore the situation. Shen Yizi looked at him suspiciously. You don't want to take the opportunity to escape, do you? Why should I run away? Do I need to run away? The aura here is so rich, I wish I could stay here and practice. Okay, I'll take you out right now. The next second, a man and a snake appeared at the bottom of the cliff. Yu Chain was coiled around Shen Yizi's wrist, holding up the snake's head and swallowing the snake's letter. When he saw the flower in the yin-yang pond, he said, yes. It's the yin-yang flower. Logically speaking, this place is just a low-level interface lacking in spiritual energy. Why do things that surprise him appear one after another? It makes no sense. Forget it, why are you thinking so much? Now quickly think of a way to get that yin-yang flower. I looked around and found no other living creatures. If there are any, they can only be hidden in this yin-yang pond. Can you swim? Shen Yizi asked suddenly. Yi Chang rolled his eyes at her. I am a chi refining monk now. I am different from ordinary snakes. How can I not swim? Then you go down and have a look. By the way, see if the pool is alive and where it leads. Whether we can get out from here depends on you. As for climbing up the cliff, she was in free fall for dozens of seconds. The cliff was at least several thousand meters high. How long would she have to climb? And if there is no way out at the bottom of the pool, she shouldn't be trapped here, right? She herself doesn't care, but she still has Qingbao. I wonder if Gu Swiding will come find her after knowing that she is missing? But even if he came and found the cut rope, he wouldn't come down the cliff for her, would he? Yi Chang said leisurely, you can go down if you want me to, but do you have to give me some compensation? I'll give you 3 more small fried fish. Okay, if it weren't for me, would you be able to eat such a delicious and beneficial thing? Okay, you're cruel. Yu Chain jumped directly from her wrist. jumped into the pool, and dived nimbly. Unexpectedly, not long after he went down, he suddenly jumped out, "Run quickly. There is a dragon hidden down there." "What? Dragon?" Shen Yizi caught him and was about to hide in the space, but Yi Chang suddenly said, "Wait." At this time, the dragon had already chased after him. The moment he saw it, Shen Yi couldn't help but take a breath. That dragon's eyes were as big as her head, and it looked really terrifying. However, just when it was about to break out of the water, it seemed to have encountered an invisible barrier and was blocked back. There is a thin layer of water, but it cannot break through it. Ouch! The dragon let out a roar that shook the heavens and the earth. The roar echoed in the valley, forming sound waves that shook Shen Yizi to the point where he could hardly stand still. Yi Chang said in a condensed voice, "I know. This dragon is trapped here. Someone has set up a dragnet and a health-preserving array here to take away the vitality from the dragon's body and pour it into the yin and yang flower. Cook it?" The man behind him is really generous. "So," Shen Yizi asked. "So we have to pick the yin and yang flowers before that person arrives. As for this dragon, it can't get out, so don't be afraid of it." Shen Yizi frowned. "Since someone keeps this yin-yang flower here, wouldn't it be a good idea for us to pick it away?" "What's wrong? The yin-yang flower is a spiritual plant raised by nature. It doesn't belong to anyone. Moreover, just by looking at that person raising it with a dragon, you know that he is definitely not a good person. What's the point of snatching things from such a person? Are you so worried? And think about it, this is a treasure that can increase your lifespan. How many people still dream about it? In the world of immortality, strength is the most important thing. Killing people and grabbing treasures is common. You actually have such ridiculous thoughts. I thought you were a good person before." Shen Yizi knocked Yi Chang on the head. "What I believe in is that I will not offend others unless they offend me, and if they offend me, I will repay them 100 times. Don't impose your theory on me." "How dare these knock him?" Yu Chang asked angrily. "Then are you going to pick this yin-yang flower?" Ification. Asterisk. By the stream, on the big rocks. Goose Whitting woke up from meditation. It has been 2 days, and Shen Yizi has not come again. Over the past 2 days, he has completely calmed down and thought clearly. As for Shen Yizi, the reason why he is in such an uncontrollable situation is mostly because of Qingbao. He loves the house and the birds, so he can't help but indulge Shen Yizi, who is Qingbao's mother. Furthermore, the food she cooks is very suitable to her own taste. Yes, that's it. After thinking about it clearly, he felt that when he faced her again, he would not be in the same situation as before. I haven't seen him for 2 days. I wonder if Qingbao misses him. When he thought of Qingbao calling him daddy in a sweet voice, an uncontrollable emotion surged in his chest, and he eagerly wanted to see him. Thinking of this, he couldn't sit still, and he swept his body straight down the mountain. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 29. Arrived at Shen's house, Goose Whitting found that the door was locked. Haven't Shen Yizi come back yet? What will happen to her? Goose Whitting looked at the mountains in the distance and suddenly heard a high-pitched dragon roar, with anger mixed in the sound. A large group of birds in the forest were frightened and flew away, flapping their wings. His body swayed, and he was already a few meters away, with afterimages pulling out behind him. Following the direction from which the dragon roar came, Goose Whitting came to the cliff and saw the cut rope at a glance. He felt nervous and strode over. Looking down, he saw a cluster of Ganoderma lucidum growing among the cliffs. I have to go into the mountains to collect herbs, which may take 2 or 3 days. The words Shen Yizi said that day unexpectedly echoed in his ears. Although there is always a voice in my heart denying it, through the analysis of the breath remaining on the rope, there is no doubt that this rope belongs to her. Realizing that Shen Yizi had most likely fallen from here, Gu Switting's heart hurt sharply, his throat felt sweet, and he almost spurted out a mouthful of blood. No, no, how could something happen to her? Gu Switting clutched the rope tightly, and suddenly discovered a suspicious point. The rope's break was very neat, as if it had been cut by a sharp blade. Moreover, the fracture was far away from the top of the cliff, which ruled out the possibility that someone else had done it. So, Shen Yizi cut the rope himself? Although it is absurd, at this moment he would rather believe that this is the case. Because if she cut it off herself, it means that she is sure to do so, otherwise how could she seek death on her own? She still has Qingbao. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the cliff, in the pond, the dragon was roaring madly as it charged Shen Yizi on the shore. Some gravel fell from time to time from the cliff, and the heaven and earth seemed to be shaking. Shen Yizi took a few steps back in fear. Although she knew that the dragon could not cause harm to her, she still had lingering fears. At this moment, Yi Chang was about to get mad at her. Why don't you pick it? Are you out of your mind? Yin-yang flowers, you don't even pick them when they are placed in front of you. Shen Yizi glanced at him coldly. I think you are out of your mind. Have you forgotten what you said? The yin-yang flower will mature soon, and the person who set up the formation will definitely come over by then. If you see yin-yang, if the flowers are gone, will I still be okay? Yu Chang's voice was a little weaker. You can hide in the space. Can I hide for the rest of my life? I'm fine with it myself, but I can't bear to keep Qingbao locked in the space. What you say makes sense. If I don't pick it up, maybe I can ask that person to give me a ride and take me up there. Yi Chang was silent for a while and said, you think too simply. That man is undoubtedly a monk. You said he wouldn't be surprised to see you at the bottom of the cliff? You fell from such a high place, but nothing happened to you. No, he will definitely suspect that you have a treasure, and then you will be in trouble unless what? You are also a monk, so he has to be careful if he wants to attack you. This poor place lacks spiritual energy, and no matter how strong it is, it will not be much higher. Even if there is a fight, you will have a steady stream of spiritual energy. Quan Zhou added, it is not easy for him to do harm to you. Shen Yizi thought about it for a while and finally made up his mind, okay, but I want you to make a contract with me first. After entering the space, Shen Yizi sat cross-legged on the ground, and Yi Chang curled up opposite her. He forced out a drop of blood essence from his body and sent it into the center of Shen Yizi's eyebrows. They signed an equal contract, and they were not allowed to hurt each other. Apart from that, there were not many restrictions on both parties. Yu Chang did not do anything during the contract signing process. First of all, he was afraid that the will in the space would suppress him. Secondly, it is not necessary. Shen Yizi's ability to contract with a small world is enough to prove that she is a person with great luck. It is his fate that he can meet her. As long as he follows her to protect her and solve problems for her, the future cultivation path will definitely go smoothly. Didn't you see that he successfully introduced qi into his body as soon as he met her? You know, he had been guarding the Ganoderma lucidum plant before, but it had been exposed to the wind and sun for several months, and he still couldn't condense a trace of spiritual energy in his body. So, he should hug this woman's thigh tightly. Although she is still very weak now, as the master of a small world, her future will never stop here. After the contract was concluded, Shen Yizi felt that he had established a mysterious connection with Yi Chang. I have several techniques here, choose whichever one suits you best in the journey of cultivating immortality. Fate is sometimes the most important thing. Yu Chang passed several techniques into her sea of consciousness. He found that this woman's soul was much stronger than ordinary mortals, basically equivalent to the strength of the soul of a monk in the late stage of chi refining, so he was not afraid that those skills would burst her. At this moment, a dark golden jade slip that was originally hidden in his sea of consciousness suddenly ran into Shen Yizi's sea of consciousness. Yu Chang. That jade slip was accidentally obtained by him during a trip to a secret realm. As soon as his consciousness penetrated into it, the jade slip ran into his sea of consciousness. Originally, he was worried that the jade slip would be harmful to him, but when he saw that it was lying quietly in the depths of the sea of consciousness, as if it had fallen into a deep sleep, he gradually let down his guard. If it hadn't run out on its own now, he would have forgotten that he had ever gotten such a jade slip. However, only a ray of his soul escaped at that time, and both his danshan and the things in the sea of consciousness were destroyed. When did this jade slip hide in his soul? It's really strange. From this point of view, this jade slip is not simple. Unfortunately, it was too late for him to get it back. The jade slips had been lost in Shen Yi's sea of knowledge. And slowly unfolded. Tai, Yuan, Zheng. Three big characters emerged and were imprinted on her sea of consciousness. Yi Chang originally wanted to ask her which technique she had chosen, but found that she was surrounded by spiritual energy, and a large amount of spiritual energy was still flowing towards her. Is this, introducing gas into the body? Do you want it to be so fast? This woman has never practiced cultivation before. Not to mention that it is quite difficult to understand those difficult techniques. Even if she understands them, she won't be able to get started so quickly, right? This qualification is simply a monster. Of course, there is no comparison with the original him. After all, he was born as a fetus. Cultivation without sun and moon. When Shen Yizi opened his eyes, it was already the second day. She stood up and stretched her body, making a crackling sound of dislocated bones. How is it? Yi Chang asked. Great, I feel like I've been reborn. It's like I can fly with just a little jump. Congratulations, I've reached the second level of chi refining in just one night. Yu Chang's tone was a little sour. What? It's been one night already. Shen Yizi subconsciously looked for Qing Beilei. Mother. The little guy rushed over and hugged her legs, with a very aggrieved expression. Oh, baby, don't cry, it's all my mother's fault for neglecting me. Let's kiss my baby all night, baby, please beat me. She grabbed Qingbao's hand and slapped herself several times. Qingbao was amused by her, so she held his face and kissed him. After the kiss, I found some gray-black stains on Qingbao's face. Where did this come from? Yi Chang was speechless. Introducing qi into the body will have a certain chance of washing the muscles and marrow. Go and wash yourself. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 30. On the cliff, Gu Switting inserted his sword into the wall and kept sliding down. Because the speed was too fast, the sword body and the cliff had violent friction, splashing out sparks. He stopped from time to catch his breath, and then continued to slide down. Finally, more than 10 minutes later, he arrived at the bottom of the cliff. However, when I glanced around, I didn't see Shen Yizi's figure. There are no wreckage or corpses. Could it be that she fell somewhere else along the way? If she didn't fall to the bottom of the cliff, her chances of survival would be greatly increased. Thinking of this, the burning pain in Gu Switting's chest that was burning all the organs in his chest suddenly eased a lot. He was about to fly away to look for traces of Shen Yizi, when a low dragon roar came from the pond. He came to the edge of the pool step by step. When he saw the familiar footprints, his heart sank. Shen Yizi undoubtedly knew that the footprints were there, but since there was no sign of her at the bottom of the cliff, there was only one possibility. Without even thinking about it, Gu Switting sank into the pond. At this time, in the space, Shen Yizhijhan, Qingbao and Yu Chang were eating and drinking, celebrating her successful entry into cultivation. Qingbao grabbed a fat chicken leg with both hands and gnawed it seriously. Shen Yizi ate with a sip of wine and a bite of vegetables. She drank fruit wine, which she bought, but then she added a few drops of medicinal spring into it and buried it in the ground for a while. Now when she took it out, it was really fragrant, sweet, and delicious. In Yuchang, the whole snake was immersed in the wine jar, gulping down the wine like a whale sucking water. The jar of wine quickly ran out of water. Hiccup, good wine. After drinking from one jar, he climbed into another jar. By the way, I haven't asked you yet, which exercise did you choose? Taiyuanjing. Taiyuanjing, why don't I remember that I gave you this skill? However, his mind was confused now. After thinking for a while, he couldn't come up with a result, so he simply stopped thinking and continued to immerse himself in the wine. After having enough wine and food, Shen Yizi didn't bother to clean up, so he hugged Qingbao and lay down on the mat covered with a thick quilt. Next to it is a peach blossom tree. It was originally a branch she broke off casually, but now it has grown into a small tree with branches full of peach blossoms. The sweet fragrance hangs in the air. It brings sweetness to one's breath. Yi Chang curled up in a corner of the mat and fell asleep. When he woke up, Shen Yizi was at a loss for a moment, feeling like he didn't know what year it was. Shaked his head, and then he woke up. Both King Bao and Yu Chang were still asleep, each looking more relaxed than the other. She cleaned up the mess on the table, cooked a pot of fish porridge, and took out the space to get some fresh air. As soon as she went out, she was shocked by the scene in front of her. The yin-yang pool was stained bright red with blood. The huge dragon was already dead. Its belly had been cut open, and all its intestines and internal organs were flowing out. It was floating on the water, turning the originally clear yin-yang pool. It was completely stained into a pool of blood. Turning his eyes again, he saw Gu Switting lying on the edge of the cliff covered in blood. She hurriedly ran over and checked his breathing, and she was relieved when she found that he was not dead yet. She checked his pulse and found that he had suffered serious internal injuries, and his internal organs had been severely damaged. There was also in his abdomen. Shen Yizi first took out a bottle of restoration pill, poured one pill into him and fed it to him, then treated his injuries, applied medicine, and wrapped gauze. Even though she has become a monk now, her strength has increased a lot, and she is still very tired after surviving this hard work. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand and breathed a sigh of relief. After staring at Gu Switting's face for a while, she suddenly realized a serious problem. He must have looked around when he came down and didn't find her. When he woke up and saw her, he asked, how could she explain? No, she had to find a hiding place before he woke up. Shen Yizi took a hoe, selected a slit between the cliffs, and started digging a hole. Every time you dig, a layer of spiritual energy is attached to the hoe, making digging much easier. Finally, an hour later, she dug a cave large enough to hide people. When Gu Switting asked, she said that she had been hiding here before. Seeing him lying there unconsciously, Shen Yizi lifted his head and put it on his lap, poked his face with his fingers, and just looked at him quietly. In the space, Yi Chang woke up and looked at the space that was nearly twice as big. He was stunned for a moment, and then he let out a scream. Shen Yizi noticed the movement and his consciousness entered the space. What's wrong? This is actually a growable space. Growable. Didn't you notice it got bigger? When he said this, Shen Yizi discovered that the space had become larger, and the boundary had expanded by 7 or 8 meters. Why did it become so big all of a sudden? Almost twice the area. Oh, you said this, the space is always getting bigger. Every time I save someone, it will get bigger. But the strange thing is that before I saved a mother and her son, it only expanded by 2 or 3 meters. Now I just healed Gu Switting's injuries, but he has grown so much. Shen Yizi's consciousness floated over and inspected his newly added territory. Yi Chang looked at her as if she were a fool. What's weird about this? That goose Whitting has strong luck. The stronger the luck, the greater the impact on the entire world. If you save him, your influence will naturally not be the same as saving him one or two ordinary people competed. I see. Yi Chang added another sentence, heaven and earth are unkind and regard all things as rotten dogs. In the eyes of heaven, ordinary people are no different from ants. No matter how many people die, they will not have much impact on the world. However, those who have great luck will not same. They have the power to change the world once they fall, the heavens may be disturbed, and the development direction of the entire world will take a complete turn. So, I will save more people with good luck in the future, but what do you think about whether a person has good luck? It's simple, I'll teach you a chi watching technique. Once you learn it, you can see the chi luck on the top of other people's heads. In fact, everyone has luck. The only difference is whether it is strong or not. From weak to strong, the corresponding colors are white, yellow, red, purple, and gold. Those who have golden light on their heads, you can't do it. Don't mess with such people, they are protected by heaven, and they will not die no matter what they do. If you go against them, no matter how strong you are, you will die. Shen Yizi, isn't this the protagonist in the novel? Yu Chang passed on the method of Guankai technique to her. Thought she would comprehend it for at least a moment and a half, but in the next moment she opened her eyes. The man and the snake looked at each other for a long time. Yu Chang couldn't help but speak first. Have you encountered any problems? Don't be embarrassed, just ask me if you don't understand anything. We are also contract partners now. I can only help you. I saw a purple-red cloud above your head, Shen Yizi said hesitantly.